Oh my goodness, South Africa 35 points to 7 over my All Blacks. That must be the most we've lost by ever. This is not a great way to prepare for a World Cup, New Zealand. Goodness gracious me, South Africa blew New Zealand off the park. We will go through some key events and stats, and you guys can let us know your thoughts. But that game was about as bad as it could have gone for New Zealand, and pretty much about as good as it could have gone for South Africa. Yeah, I mean, geez, wow. I don't know what to say, folks. There was a stinger for Duane Vermeulen early, so it looked like, this is a couple of weeks out from the World Cup. Do we really want to be watching these guys smash into each other like that? But South Africa won a scrum penalty. Vermeulen was fine, so things start to look all right. And then, goodness gracious, New Zealanders couldn't get out of their half. It was all South Africa. I mean, to be fair, New Zealand didn't concede points until like 18 minutes. But I don't think they had ball in the South African half at all during that 18 minutes. It was unbelievable. I mean, advantage from a line-out. New Zealand's just trying to defend that maul a bit overeager, keep conceding penalties. Third time they go advantage. They go wide to Mapimpi. Fourth time with advantage again. The maul finally gets stopped. New Zealand are on a yellow card warning. To be honest, they could have had a yellow card earlier. The fourth warning or whatever it was maybe even a little bit too generous from Makazole. New Zealand scrum and Talia was able to kind of run it out wide, but Pieter-Steph managed to tackle him into touch anyway. So New Zealand just couldn't escape. They hadn't conceded any points, but they couldn't escape. Gets worse when Aaron Smith just in his own goal area virtually passes it to nobody, which is just like the feet of Sam Cane. So Sam Cane can only touch it down. It's a 5-metre scrum to South Africa. They get advantage, of course, because the scrum is dominant. They go for a second scrum. Esterhuizen with a big carry almost makes it. A few carries, but then Klerk knocks it on at the base of the scrum. Somehow New Zealand haven't conceded any points. This is like a bright side in a game which is not full of many bright sides. Whitelock manages line-out steal, so it looks like New Zealand can exit. They're able to kick it, but still they're stuck in their own half. And eventually that yellow card warning, which Makazole had kind of indicated earlier, well, it comes to a yellow card on about 13 minutes. Scott Barrett, he gets yellow carded for going off his feet at the ruck, or playing the 9. It's been coming, man. Like, the penalty count's horrendous. You can't concede that many penalties. A yellow card is going to come. But to make matters worse, Tyrell Lomax, whose scrummaging has come on leaps and bounds in the last 18 months, goes off on a stretcher, seemingly with a massive cut on his leg. God knows what happened to him, but it looks pretty nasty. Hopefully it's just like a flesh wound and can heal pretty quickly. If it's nothing worse than that. Like, hopefully it's just a bit of broken skin. But yeah, it looked pretty gross. So he goes off on a stretcher, which is, from a New Zealand perspective, yeah, pretty bloody awful, to be honest. With Fletcher Newell, who comes on for him, has not played a lot of rugby this year. But yeah, so he goes off. It's still scoreless, though. South Africa got another attacking line out. And this time it's Sam Cane who comes in at the side of the maul. The yellow card warning from the maul defence earlier still stands. So he gets pinged. And it's 15 against 13. Can South Africa score against 13 guys? It takes a wee while. They get held up from their next line-out move. But another penalty conceded this time. It's De Groot at the breakdown. Means it's South African maul. They get advantage, some phases. And at last, it takes the captain to go over. Kolisi, he's able to get, I think, his first try against New Zealand. So 7 points to 0 to South Africa after about 18, 19 minutes. But they had to work for it. And yeah, New Zealand have lost 2 players. But the pressure has just been consistent. They've not opted for a 3, not even looked like it. One of the only kind of concerning things, I guess if you can even call it that, for South Africa was a couple of times when they scored points. They were a little bit soft on the restart. They conceded a penalty pretty much straight from the restart. I think it was Etzebeth. And that gave Moong a seemingly pretty easy shot at goal. But he couldn't kick. He couldn't kick it. That's a bankable one all day long, but no, he hits the post from a pretty simple 3, which would have been pretty nice to get when you've only got 13 guys on the field, to be honest. But he hits the post. We end up with another scrum. Advantage to South Africa again. Etzebeth gets a big line break. They cross kick it. Talia is able to intercept it. So still kind of holding on with 13 guys. Eventually South Africa kick it out on the full, which is a little bit of pressure off from New Zealand. And Barrett's come back on a bit earlier. Kane's back on now. So they've only conceded 7 points during the 13-man on the field moment for New Zealand. Again, it's not that bad. We've been playing nothing. We've been just on defence the whole time. If anything, you could have had 3 points, New Zealand. It could have been only a 4-point deficit during 2 yellow cards, which would have been pretty nice. 7's still not too bad in the scheme of things. 32 minutes South African line-out steal means New Zealand are under more pressure. South Africa knock on, but the problem with knock-ons is they lead to scrums, although we did get kind of one lucky one where Kitshoff got pinged at the scrum, and then the replay, it looked pretty lucky. So New Zealand are able to kind of exit. New Zealand have been trying to offload their way out of trouble because the South African line speed is pretty incredible. But when you offload to South African guys enough times, eventually they're going to score. And that's how the second try comes, which is kind of an interesting one because I guess like it's a bit of a cheap one in terms of, it's not a gift, but you know what I mean? It's not like it was relentless attacking pressure. It was the relentless defensive pressure that led to the points. So, yeah, New Zealand are forced into these passes. One of them earlier had been intercepted. I forget who intercepted it. Was it Moodie, I think, intercepted one. But this time it's just a Geordie Barrett offload to Arendse. And you're not going to catch him, man. Way too easy. So, like I say, after all those kind of line-out drives and scrums and whatnot, it's actually the defence that ends up with the points, which was kind of an interesting one. So, 14-0. Again, though, from the restart, New Zealand get a chance. Talia is able to catch the restart, so a little bit soft from South Africa. But then Vermeulen's able to get South Africa out of dodge with a breakdown penalty. So, yeah, those 2 restarts, if you're looking for things to complain about for South Africa, there's 2 little fixes. New Zealand have certainly got a lot more than that. And then, yeah, Scott Barrett with a clear out on Malcolm Marx. It looked bad at the time. I saw it in real time and thought, like, ooh, wonder if they'll go back and look at that. And sure enough, the TMO had a look at it, and it's unnecessary, man. I think the ball was pretty much already won. You didn't need to clean Malcolm Marx out there. It's dumb. Malcolm Marx is virtually lying on the ground, man. He's prone. There's nothing to hit except bad contact, and it's a yellow card, which is the second yellow card, and that means he's gone for the game. So it goes from bad to worse, man. We've already conceded 14 points, had virtually no ball, and had 2 yellow cards already, and now you're going to play the rest of the game with a man down. Jacobson is the man sub, so they bring Vaa'i on for a bit more of that kind of tall timber in the second row. It looks like there's a bright side when Will Jordan looks to have scored a try. The hands finally stick from New Zealand, the offloading game. Beauden Barrett with a line break, and Geordie Barrett keeping the ball alive. Moonga with a pop ball, but they find a knock-on from Talia in the build-up. So, yeah, no points in that first half from New Zealand. And it's a long half. It takes ages. It's over an hour. So it's a very, very slow half of rugby. A few stoppages for injuries and quite a lot of set piece. Rugby, there's a 255 to 177 at halftime to South Africa. Possession of territory is actually evened up a wee bit. The first 20 would have been all South Africa. But, 2 clean breaks to 1 to South Africa. 7 mauls to 2. And 11 penalties conceded by New Zealand to 5. So, yeah, 11 penalties for half of rugby is a horrendous number. Second half is, I don't know, man. It's a great half from South Africa. It's a pretty hard view. It's pretty hard view from a New Zealand point of view, man. The second half starts great. Like, if we're talking about restarts, this one is a South African great restart from a South African kickoff. Mapimpi just puts Rico under all kinds of pressure, smashes into him. Mapimpi had a pretty good game, I thought, to be honest. He's been under a bit of stick. It means a poor New Zealand kick out for touch means a bit of good field position for South Africa, and that leads directly to Malcolm Marx's try. 41 minutes, start of the second half, all from that pressure at the restart. So you can kind of give Mapimpi a try assist for that one in a way. So 21-0, and interestingly, that's Libbok's first kind of tough kick, which is not out in front, and he's got the kicking boots today. It's like he's been holding back on us. But, Libbok is that kind of guy. He can have good days, and if he has a few good days at the World Cup, man, look out. Because he's been a bit scattergun thus far, but boy was he on song today. Even one of the ones later on that he hit looked like it was going wide, but it bent back in. It was a thing of beauty. 45 minutes, New Zealand flood the breakdown on a South African ball. A bit of loose ball. Looks like Moodie's got a try when he kicks one through and gathers it. Nice steps, but that one's TMO'd. So both sides have a try TMO'd. And then to make matters worse or better, depending on which side of the fence you're on, South Africa changed 7 forwards. They bring on 7 replacement forwards, which is ridiculous. But like the New Zealand forwards were already under heaps of pressure. Lomax going off hadn't helped things. Scott Barrett not being there didn't help things. And then you got virtually an entire fresh South African pack coming on. Yeah, that's not something you see very often, but it was brutal. Pieter-Steph to Toit, to be fair, did get a yellow card on 51 minutes for a swinging arm on Kane's head. I thought at the time it's going to stay yellow, even though they reviewed it, because Kane really dipped into it. So it was just kind of an unfortunate one, that one. But Manie Libbok, speaking of his boots, great touch finder on 58 minutes during the yellow card. And they managed to get a maul try. Bongi goes over. That's probably the most kind of dominant maul they had. I didn't give Marx's try enough credit earlier, by the way. That one was like, it looked like they're going to set for a maul, and they're going to pop it back out to the side. So, kind of a bit of a trick play, because you're waiting for the maul. This one, they do go for the maul, so it's a nice bit of variation. 28-0, again, a good conversion. New Zealand keep knocking it on. The South African defence is just stopping all the New Zealand momentum. South Africa get another line out on 66 minutes, and Quacker Smith is able to go over. It's a good bit of variation again, man. 35-0. If anything from South Africa, you'll say, well, you didn't score in the last 13 minutes, so you took the foot off the gas, but you were already 35-0 up. But I'm finding a stretch to find things to complain about. A couple of restarts, and then New Zealand finally getting a score on 71 minutes. Cam Roigard, it's just individual brilliance. Like, he steps, he goes past Moodie, he fends off Willemse, and he gets past Libbok. Like, one of those guys should have made that tackle. All 3 of them miss him. But if you haven't seen Cam Roigard play in Super Rugby, he is an absolute sniping, attacking 9 who does this kind of thing all the time in Super Rugby. So at least the All Blacks don't get nilled. 35-7. Man. Brutal. That's not a great one for a World Cup prep from New Zealand, but that's magnificent from South Africa. I don't know what else to say, man. We were just outclassed. Couldn't front up. Scrum was under pressure. Multiple lineouts got stolen. Just the defensive line pressure from South Africa was shutting everything down from New Zealand. They looked lost in attack, having to just offload to try and find any space. That was leading to knock-ons. It had a couple of times where the offloads looked, to open up a bit of space and look like something could happen, but ultimately, man, this one was a lopsided contest, and it's pretty rare that we see New Zealand beaten like that. It's a bit reminiscent of when end of, was it 2021 or 2022? I forget now, when we went to play Ireland and France and got outclassed in those games, and Fozzie was under all kind of pressure. We just looked lost. And, we didn't have an answer. I mean, the red card's a factor, but still, New Zealand weren't going to win this game, even if it was 15-15, were they? Run meters 450 to 554, so South Africa dominate there. The position and territory, surprisingly, actually finished kind of even. Penalty counts 14-10, which is not as lopsided as it was in the first half. But lineouts from New Zealand, 10 from 15 is poor. South Africa was 15 from 17, which is a bit tidier. Clean breaks 6-4 to South Africa. They just win all the kind of key areas, don't they? Kicking game was good. Talia has 11 defenders beaten, which is nice. The group makes 8 from 8 tackles, but the scrum was under pressure. Esterhuizen looked solid, man. 62 metres, a clean break, 4 defenders beaten. Pieter-Steph makes 17 out of 20 tackles. Spends a bit of time in the naughty boys chair, but played pretty well. South African scrum was big. Damian came on. had a big impact. I mean, a lot of the South African forward subs had impact, actually. I think Willemse got man of the match, but I think you have to give it to one of the South African forwards, don't you? Because that's where the game was won. Yeah. Kuba's run out got a wee bit of a run out on the wing, which was something a bit different. We saw Esterhuizen and Geordie Barrett both lining up on the flank at one point when Pieter-Steph had his yellow card, and obviously the All Blacks had the red card, so that was also a bit different. But yeah, 35-7. That's a big scoreline. Well done, South Africa. If there's a quarter-final between these two sides, which is a distinct possibility, you'd have to give a little bit of a psychological edge there. I mean, New Zealand won pretty comfortably at Mount Smart, but this is a neutral venue at Twickenham. And if it does come to a quarterfinal, it'll be a neutral venue again. So we'll see. Still lots of rugby to be played. New Zealand a bit of homework to do in the next couple of weeks. Fingers crossed Tyrell Lomax is all right. Trevor Nyakane picked up a knock at one point as well, but he seemed to bounce back all right. Same with Malcolm Marx. Same with Vermeulen. But yeah. You guys let us know your thoughts. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.